Each year, Microsoft Research hosts hundreds of influential speakers from around the world, including leading scientists, renowned experts in technology, book authors, and leading academics, and makes videos of these lectures freely available.
I'm Nancy Heckinger, and there I am. I'm Nancy Heckinger. I am a teacher at the Interactive Telecommunications program at New York University. We call it ITP. I teach the Design Expo class. I'm standing here instead of our Microsoft liaison, George Peshnik, who's taken back to New York, and it's a shame because he was such an important member of the class. But it also gives me the opportunity right now to just thank Microsoft for this wonderful program, and with especially to Curtis, Wong, Mike, and Shelley, who your generosity and your support and your enthusiasm is just awesome, and this has been a great experience for our students. I'll tell you a little bit something about ITP. Well, that's the class there. ITP was founded about 30 years ago by Red Burns. Many of you may know her. It's a 2-year graduate program based in the Tisch School of the Arts at New York University. I think it was the first, maybe the only tech program that was found that's been in an art school for that long. It's a make things kind of place. It's not a computer science program, it's not a tech program, it's not a new media program or an art program or a design program. It's kind of all of them. And some people have called us the Center for the Recently Possible. Our mission is to explore the imaginative use of existing technologies, of communication technologies, and look forward to how they might augment, improve, and bring delight and art, sometimes silliness, into people's lives. We've got about 220 students that come from more than 35 different countries. About half of our students are men, half women, and about half, 50-50, come from the sciences, engineering and computer science, and about half from the arts and the humanities. We've been talking to everybody, and it seems like all the schools have a different process, so I thought I'd tell you a little bit about what ours was. The first thing is we took the brief of Service for Social and added some of our own criteria that would match some of our educational goals, and they sort of formed into 3 Ds. One is it had to be doable, and what we meant by that is that you can sort of imagine all sorts of social software or social networks, but we really wanted to, at the end of this 14 weeks, to have a proof of concept that this idea could be done in the real world, and it could be done by the team that was working on it, so that by the 4 or 5 people that were working on it could do it. The second one was the D is the demographic. They had to go outside their cozy 18 to 34 tech-savvy demographic, and therefore do research on other people's needs. And the third thing was that it had to do some good. So we limited it in that way. And then I'll tell you a little bit about our class structure. We're a very collaborative school. This is actually the only class that we teach that has any degree of sort of competition in it. And mostly this is a collaborative class that we're trying to teach, in a sense, fast-track product design process. We work as a class in the beginning to do research on the topic areas and the different populations and the customers. I scramble them up sort of jigsaw style into different teams each week so that they end up all getting informed about various research areas. Then I make the final team assignments. Then we work like a design firm. The class is more or less like a weekly staff meeting where each team will present, and the rest of the class will offer constructive critiques, make suggestions, and give material help. So then the final class, when they have to make their final presentations, what we do is bring in outside judges, people who've never seen them before, so they don't love them like I do. And we give them a chart, which is a rubric based on Microsoft's criteria, which are things like evidence of collaboration, UI design, presentation, how they responded to the brief. This year we had 2 VCs, 2 investors, 2 people who had been startup entrepreneurs, a CEO of a major NGO who was also on the board of an investing company that focuses just on social entrepreneurship, an academic dean from another school, and for Spice, an artist. And so they came in. And so they get this little chart. They grade them on a scale of 1 to 5. We add them up, and that's how we find our winner. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the two of the projects that didn't. We had 3 projects all together. Story Grove is an application for Facebook that helps tight-knit communities gather and share memories that matter to them most in a private corner of the world's most popular social network. Now, what they did through their research was they tapped into a growing fatigue with the hundreds of meaningless contexts every day and updates of, the latest pizza that people ate, and sort of a longing for the days before friend was a verb. This was done by 4 students, Ian Cleary, Monica Krishnan, Matt Swenson, and Baowen Huang. Streamline is a mobile app that helps the people who help the homeless. It provides outreach workers tools to facilitate every step of their administrative burden, from gathering and sharing information to reducing paperwork. Just out of interest, there are 40,000 homeless people in the streets of New York every night. There are 2 people in the Department of Homeless Services. They are serviced by 260 nonprofit agencies that are independent and don't really work with each other, but all need the same information and need to share it. Now, 10 years ago, this would have, to deal with this would have required a multi-million-dollar enterprise software. Today, with social software, this team of 4 designed a mobile app that will in fact be deployed next year. Common Ground, the largest housing agency in New York, has commissioned them to build this product out, and that was Rajan Aikad, Bumi Adeleke, Lisa Maria Ewing, and Pei-Yu Liu. Now, just because the teacher in me has to say this, I just want to make a final observation. I've taught this class for a number of years, 4 or 5 years, and every year the winner has been the group that came together best as a team. The product ideas have always been worthy, they've been well researched, well designed, and well presented. The distinguishing factor, and remember, the judges have never seen them except for this one time, right? So all of these qualities shine through, is the group that has taken the time to learn to work through differences, appreciate each other's specific talents and contributions. They treat each other with respect, always seem to have a good sense of humor, and in this case, they eat together and really love good food. So I want to introduce to you the team from ITP, Farmbridge.
Hi, we are Farmbridge, and our project is dedicated to getting healthy, locally grown food to the people of New York City. This is Julio, Cindy, Tianwei, and I am Noah. Farmbridge is an online platform that's going to make it easier for neighbors to form communities in order to gain access to locally farmed food. What we provide is twofold. First is management tools for the community leaders, and the second is social software for the community as a whole. All 4 of us live in New York, and all 4 of us care a lot about good food. But in New York, there are still entire neighborhoods that don't have access to the kind of healthy, fresh food that we care so much about, and that people in Seattle get to take for granted. We care about local food in particular because it is about health and nutrition, but it's also about community and connection. So the question that motivates our project is, how can we use social software to empower more urban residents to gain access to locally farmed food? We recognize that there are many ways to get local food in New York. Each one has its benefits and its drawbacks. What we want to focus on is the CSA model. So what is CSA? CSA stands for Community Supported Agriculture. In New York, CSAs are groups of urban residents who band together for a variety of different reasons that you can see up here. They band together in order to buy shares of a local farm's production for the entire season. The farmer then will deliver those shares to a central location in the neighborhood, so a church or a park or a school, where the members can come and pick up their shares. In a city where many people don't even know their neighbors' names, this becomes a real catalyzer of community. And there are a lot of reasons why we're excited about the CSA model. The first is that we believe it's the best able to get healthy food beyond just the wealthiest neighborhoods in the city. The second is that it's a truly grassroots approach that's empowering the end user. It's also better for the environment, better for the local economy, and it allows for open green space to be preserved close to cities. Lastly, our research has pointed to tremendous demand from within this community. In the past 1 to 2 years, there's been an explosion of interest in CSAs nationwide. To give you one anecdote from New York, 2 years ago, the Park Slope CSA in Brooklyn had 90 members, and then last year, 290 members signed up. So as the CSAs grow in popularity, they also become a lot harder to manage, and this is where Farmbridge is going to come in. We're going to give the managers the tools they need to run these communities, and once they bring their communities online, we're going to give them the tools they need to thrive as the tight-knit, real-world groups that they are.
So, in order to drive our design, the first thing we had to do was gain a really deep understanding of how these communities actually work. And in order to do that, we attended the Just Food CSA conference at the beginning of this year. This is a yearly conference in New York that is attended by pretty much organizers of every single CSA in the city. And after that conference, we had opportunity to interview over 20 CSA organizers and a handful of CSA members. And we're going to share with you both some motivations that we found out about and some challenges. So let's start with the motivations. Across the board, we understand that CSA managers are all volunteers, and they do this because they're passionate about contributing to their neighbors and contributing to their communities and helping people adapt to a more sustainable as well as a healthier way of eating. However, we understand that these community organizers are totally overwhelmed, and this is causing issues for them because they're not able to grow their communities, make their communities larger, and they're not also able to meet the needs of their communities that continue to evolve as they want to get more foods and they want to have more payment options in order to work with CSAs. So I'm going to now talk a little bit about the challenges that are really kind of building this workload for the CSA managers.
Work is definitely the biggest challenge of running a CSA.
So across the board, we heard that the workload associated, administrative workload associated with running a CSA is keeping these communities from being able to grow. The growth, for example, that Noah just mentioned is something that most CSAs are not able to deal with because these are volunteer-run organizations. Also, this keeps them from being able to provide their communities with both more food options and payment options, as I just mentioned.
You need to have systems in place that are easily transferable to new core groups so that you don't lose records, so that things move smoothly.
So the other thing that we hear loud and clear is we know that these volunteer-run organizations are very flexible. The managers of these organizations change very often, but the systems that they're using to run these communities are cobbled together ad hoc, and every time one of these transitions take place, often things will fall between the cracks, which of course makes it much more difficult for these communities to continue running effectively.
Living closely to your season and eating in accordance to that is really complicated.
I think any of us who have ever tried to go on a diet, we know that changing what we eat is not about making food available, but it's also about changing our lifestyle and adapting to this new way of eating. And these CSA communities provide a lot of support, both in education, to their communities to help them make this transition. After talking to all of these CSA organizers, we also had a chance to sit down with the CSA program director from Just Food. Just Food is an organization in New York that supports pretty much every single CSA in our city. They help link CSAs to local farms, as well as helping them grow and deal with all the growing pains associated to a CSA. The director of Just Food had a few things to share with us about what makes a CSA successful.
One of the things that makes the CSAs really successful is having a core group of members that are willing to step up. And I think also within that group, having it be a dynamic group.
Okay, so from all this research, there was a few takeaways that we wanted to guide our designs. The first thing that was loud and clear to us is that CSA organizers definitely need support. They need help to manage their memberships, subscriptions, payments, all the volunteers that they need to manage at the local distributions, and of course, even the distributions and things like that, the physical distribution of the produce. However, this is a lot of work, so we realized that providing tools just to the organizer is not enough. We heard that these communities, the ones that are successful, have engaged members and have large groups of organizers. So we need to provide these communities the tools that will enable the organizer to engage the farmer as well as all the members in the day-to-day activities of the CSA.
Volunteer organizers are the glue that keep these local food communities together. Here's Jen. She's the core manager of the Sunset Park CSA. I'm going to tell you a little about her and how our platform can help. Jen is the person responsible for things like memberships, subscriptions, and farmer relationships. And she's really driven by her passion for local food and to connecting to people within her neighborhood. She does this on top of her full-time job, which can sometimes make her feel like she has a lot on her plate. Because as her community has grown, so have those responsibilities. So how can we help organizers like Jen so that we can decrease their administrative burden and increase their flexibility? We know that these communities want to add more subscriptions, more farmers, more memberships, but what's holding them back is their current setup. Here's an Excel sheet that Jen maintains by hand every time she has to add a new member. And we think that there's a better way, a Farmbridge way. In this situation, Jen could just log on to Farmbridge and email members a link to register onto our platform. When she logs in, she can see exactly how the membership drive is doing in real time. In this case, the Sunset Park CSA has about 5 more members to go before they get booked, and they have 30 days before the growing period starts. Below, she sees Brian, her newest member, has just registered and now appears on her radar. At Farmbridge, we wanted to make our design very crowdsourcing friendly and collaborative, and in this case, Brian can take action too. When he logs into Farmbridge, he can see how the membership drive is doing for himself, and in this case, since the Sunset Park CSA is just short of those 5 members, he can take action with the Contact CSA panel on the right, and then mention to Jen that he'll be willing to host a potluck to which they can draw on potential new recruits to get their CSA booked. So what happened if one day Jen just decides to pick up her bags and move to Costa Rica? Well, the Sunset Park CSA won't fall apart because they're on Farmbridge. Because on Farmbridge, the records are backed up, they're centralized, and they're easy to pass off to the core manager. So I've walked you through Farmbridge from the core manager perspective. Let's hear it for the community members.
Well, this is Brian again. Brian is a CSA member of Sunset Park CSA. And he's a designer, he loves cooking, enjoys local food. But Brian is still new to the community and getting used to cooking seasonally. Now every week, Brian checks his basket on Farmbridge to see what's coming in for the next pickup. And his manager is updating this list every week. This is much easier than before when Brian has to call his manager or wait for the weekly newsletter to stay informed. And this week, Brian is expecting a produce named rutabaga, but Brian, unfortunately, has no idea what actually is a rutabaga. In this case, click on the rutabaga icon. A menu pops up saying, "What's this? How to deal with, and some recipes." Brian clicks on "What's this?" A message from Brian's farmer will show up telling what actually is rutabaga. This makes Brian feel great since he knows these are words from who actually grows the produce. If he moves his mouse onto recipes, a list of recommended recipes shared by other community members will show up. Everything about rutabaga is here, helping Brian make tasty dishes with something that he's never heard of. And now Brian feels like he got inspired by other people's content. He would like to share something that he is good at, say, baking zucchini bread. By simply uploading his recipes, Brian's post got published on the sharing page of his community. Everyone else who has zucchini in their basket will appreciate this a lot. And what if Brian found he's not available for next week pickup? Farmbridge makes this easy. On the neighborhood map view, Brian can see Cindy lives nearby, and he's going to contact her online to see if she's available to help him out next week.
We want to leave you with this view because we think it's something really special. We started off trying to get healthy local food to the people of New York City. But what we've built in the process is a place where locals only, so small groups of 50 to 100 people who are neighbors, are together online. And that's something beautiful. It's a community of trust, and it's something that we don't really think exists anywhere else on the web. You need to borrow a cup of sugar. You can't get that by going onto Facebook. This is what Farmbridge becomes. It's an online home for a real-world, tight-knit community. Thanks very much. Come out.
Hello. Great job, guys. Really compelling idea. I don't know how many CSA people are here in the audience. Any CSA members or organizers? One? Yay. I didn't know much about it. So your presentation of the user scenario and the background research was needed, and good job getting it across, because I was like, what are they talking about? I had no idea. So I definitely felt like that administrative problem that you took on and the benefits of the web are pretty clear. I was perhaps the question is, did you pursue prototyping at all, or any kind of evaluation with CSA members in terms of the design details that you were getting into at the end of the process there?
Yeah, we basically, the short answer is that a prototype is our next step. What we really focused on for the 3 months of this course was talking to as many CSA members and managers as we could. It's a really ad hoc sort of community. People sort of cobble together different solutions for each individual neighborhood, and no CSA, even within New York, let alone the rest of the country, is run currently the same way. So the long answer is that we put a lot of time into the research, and at this point we feel like prototyping won't actually be that hard. Technologically, this is not a game changer, but it's the next step for prototype.
I do want to add that during our user research section, when we spoke to Paula Luquetz of Just Foods, she had mentioned that other startups had kind of gone into this field and had failed because they failed to take into account talking to the actual core managers and asking them what they really thought. Because these startups just kind of created this system and expected, these people just use it naturally or whatever. And so we're still in that research stage to see what they really want. But based on the earlier interviews we had, this is the kind of what we showed on our screen.
Yeah, great job. Looked good. My feedback would be that I think there's a part of the design process that you have to do in the prototyping, and that getting both perspectives of the manager and the participant, and what are their balancing out both their needs, so that the scenario where the rutabaga, you want to cancel your delivery this week because you're going on vacation or whatever. That how are those scenarios handled is the stuff that you get out of prototyping, and it would have benefited from that.
And the only thing that I will add there is, since this project has started, I've actually, in the last several months, I've become not only a CSA member, but I'm actually the volunteer organizer for my CSA, and I've become really involved, which it's been great, and it's really one of the things that has helped us guide our design, and now that has both that and the connections we've made, I think, have opened the doors for this next step that we need to take, because now we do have a network of CSA organizers, CSA support organizations that we know and that are interested, because they all know that the solution is needed. But I have to say, to Cindy's point, I think they're a little bit cynical because they've seen other people do things that didn't work, that weren't flexible enough, and things like that. But that is the next phase that we're looking forward to kind of kicking off after this.
Yeah, I echo the comments so far. I think it's a great idea. I mean, this is one where, very contrasting to the previous one, this is very tangible, very real today. You could imagine this out on the web. So I might be a little bit more focused on my critique that way. I think a social network, the way you guys have designed this, is perfect for this kind of an audience, and perfect for this kind of a need. The nugget that I saw in here that was really interesting is you kind of go beyond just the help with the administrative tasks. I mean, there are sites that do that. For example, today, Team Cowboy lets you do the same kind of thing for organizing soccer teams. But it doesn't create the community. It doesn't get people to be involved. And there's some subtle clues on your prototype up there where you were showing how to get people to change their own behavior, to volunteer. So it's not just that one lone hero keeping the CSA going, right? It actually gets other people to step in baby steps, because nobody wants to take on the mantle of all of the heavy work. But if you don't get enough of the sort of the social volunteering, you won't be able to sustain it. So I love those kind of thinking aspects. The question that I've got that I'd love you to think about is, what's your economic engine for this? How do you get people to pay for it? How does it thrive? I mean, it costs something someplace, and I didn't see really any kind of indication of that here.
Yeah, I think that the goal for us when we started thinking about this project was, what would happen is if instead of 150 CSAs in New York, there were 10,000. What if this really sort of balloons? With economy of scale, you can really change the way food distribution, especially local produce in general in New York, goes. And at that scale, I think that it's farmers that are economically benefiting from this. A lot of what we heard at the conference we went to and in talking to farmers is that basically CSAs are the only way for small family-run farms, independently owned, to start in the region around New York right now. It's just too expensive unless you can get that kind of upfront commitment that CSA members offer. So we've talked about a couple different ones. We definitely haven't set on one. There's potential advertising avenues. There's the potential to have CSAs pay to use our software or pay to have a premium service from our software. But we think that probably farmers would be the way.
So going back to what Rob was saying about prototyping, I think if you were doing this as a startup, one of the things you'd really want to understand very quickly is that particular business model. Mm-hmm. And I'd argue in this case that the prototyping and the interactions and stuff, that's pretty typical on the web. The hard one that you guys are going to have to wrestle with is really getting down to, how are people going to pay for this? Do you have the right idea? And prototyping that as mm-hmm. designers, I think that's a really important aspect to this.
Mm-hmm.
To stay in that theme a little bit, did you guys approach any big time grocers like Whole Foods or somebody to say, hey, what about a CSA section of your store to help out a little bit?
We didn't really approach any kind of large existing businesses. We did take a look at different models such as co-ops, farmer markets, and different ways that these type of foods are coming into the city. The CSA model, because one of the things that really inspired us about it is because it is something where you have, for example, like my CSA, it was formed because one person who lives in my neighborhood on the Lower East Side was really tired of the fact that we only have one supermarket in that whole neighborhood that sells fresh vegetables. And they wanted to take that matter into their own hands. And I think the way for something, for an organization like that to be involved would be more is the providing of space. That's one of the physical space actually to have a delivery point for a CSA is a really tough thing. But the balance that we wanted to keep was we wanted to make sure that we're not taking the power out of the hands of these communities, because having this be community-driven was really important to us, partially also because CSAs at the beginning of a season actually vote on what vegetables are going to be grown for them throughout the whole year. So it's really something where a community in New York that's mostly a Hispanic community versus a community that is mostly Jewish might choose totally different vegetables for their specific CSAs. So that's why one of the reasons why we ended up not kind of going too much trying to use existing retailers and things like that, but it is definitely something we can explore as we now go forward and try to really monetize this and figure out how can we make this be something that people that can survive.
Yeah, no, one quick add to that is just that in addition to being really important to us, it is sort of the most important thing to members of CSAs. They are fiercely independent, and the idea of knowing their farmer, seeing their farmer every week or two, and running this on their own is, I think, the most important thing as to why people join them. So I think that the idea of a grocer, Whole Foods, somebody having a CSA area and getting people to come into their pickup is cool. It'd be hard to start with that because I think it might turn off some of the real diehard.
The one business that we did see doing this is restaurants. There are a few restaurants now in New York that are becoming the delivery points for CSAs because it's a great way for them to market their restaurant. Especially a restaurant that's all about local food. This is a great way for them to really kind of engage with their community in their neighborhood that is passionate about that local food. So that is the one, really type of business that we've seen that kind of connection starting to happen. And it is definitely one of the types of businesses that we do want to explore in the future if we can integrate them more into our project.
Yep. And I saw zucchini bread as one of the things up there, and I know as you get involved in CSAs, you end up with a lot of zucchini. So maybe you change the name to Zucchini Bridge. You really need a way to get rid of your zucchini.
In New York, it's kale, right? Exactly.
And kale, yes, especially in the winter. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.